I'd like to begin at the beginning of our nation's experience. And the first of the Federalist Papers, and it was authored by a man named Alexander Hamilton. And Hamilton wrote in what became the first paragraph of the first Federalist paper of all of the Federalist Papers to define our nation. It seems to have been left to the people of this nation by their to determine the question whether man is forever destined to be ruled by fear and force, or whether we can build a society with constitution that is sourced in reflection and thought. As I travel the world, this appears to me to be the primary dichotomy that we are facing. Parents, young people, teachers, and the state, now in the middle school in Egypt where we learn the second language, fear and force, the balance of reflection and choice. When I was in Saudi Arabia studying religion in the first year of high school, it was a reality that I was doing. When I taught in madrasa, the United States Department of State throughout Central Asia. Fear and force as opposed to reflection and choice. As a lawyer, I saw that balance. As an employee of presidents and queens and heads of state, I saw that balance. And so, I remember a man by the name of John Dewey who said there is nothing as practical as a good theory. And so what I'd like to do for the remaining few minutes that we have together is attempt to put some flesh to the skeletal structure that Alexander Hamilton offered us in his ideas of what this society could possibly look like. To begin our journey, I take you to Recife, Brazil, where today the United States advanced to the group of 16 in the 2014 World Cup, and where a man once lived named Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire is one of the great educators of our time. He was a teacher, he was a government employee, he was a person that was concerned with the peasants, concerned with farmers, concerned with workers, their ability to organize, their ability to gain literacy, their ability to have freedom. Paulo Freire teaches us in many books, but one of them is called Pedagogy of the Oppressed, that the purpose of education is liberation. The purpose of education is liberation. The purpose of education is to amplify the dignity of the human being that is sitting in the classroom, be that person a student or a teacher or a member of community that is coming to learn. That in order to liberate young people, we would have to give them the tools in order that they become literate in what is happening around them. Not literate of letters, not a literacy of the combination of letters into words, but a literacy of this world, of its structure and architecture, of its nodes of influence and tribes of oppression, of its modes of liberation, that our students would become literate in how this world functions, how this world oppresses them, and how this world can be engaged in a way that brings about a change in the way that we live on a regular basis. And so Paulo Freire told us that there are two types of education. There is a banking theory of education, in which a student is a vessel, a pot, a bucket. And the ability of that student is limited to receiving information from the teacher. And most often that relationship is a sadistic one, in which the student is domesticated, is made small, is made insignificant, in contrast to the knowledge of the teacher. In that banking theory of education, we depend on the individual's need to fit in, on the individual's need to ascribe to a center of power, on an individual's inclination towards masochism, a love of those that oppress, a love of those that inflict violence, a love of those that render us impotent in our ability to change the realities that have led to the oppression that we are experiencing on a regular basis. Juxtaposed against the banking theory of education is a problem-posing approach to education, in which knowledge is co-constructed between the student and teacher alike, in which the student comes to the classroom with experiences from the world that are relevant for the progress of society as it is discussed in the arena, and endow the individual with an authenticity and respect that they deserve as a part of society, as a contributor to what will once be. Paulo Freire says that education is only education if it is radical in nature. Not radical as in left of center. Not radical as in we take up arms against the oppressor. But radical as in the square root of an idea. That the teacher is responsible for bringing a student to the most basic understanding of the building blocks of reality. To the square root of the knowledge that needs to be gained in order for there to be a change in the reality that they are living. That every teacher should be responsible for bringing about a reality, for facilitating an experience that allows for this radical and revolutionary approach to changing the society within which we live. So Freire teaches us that if we are to adopt a pedagogy, if we are to adopt a philosophy of education, if we are to adopt a perspective on why we are here in an academic environment, then our pedagogy should be a pedagogy of critique. That our approach, our philosophy should be one in which we are attempting to help young people balance as global leaders and as communal leaders and as members of family and as individual human beings in their relationship with themselves, and we are attempting to bring about an ability for them to choose reflection and choice. To lead a world in which we yield to other people in other lands the ability to reflect and choose. And not believe that it is within our privilege, and yet everywhere else, to live pursuant to fear and force. And so there is a way that we can do this in the literature. It is called in Portuguese, conscientização. In English, it is referred to as conscientization. Conscientization is composed of two parts. The first part is helping a student gain awareness of the reality within which they live. Helping them understand the levers of power. Helping them understand their endowed dignity in being able to push back against the oppression that they are suffering from. To help a student understand the architecture of social change. The architecture of social change. That this society is composed of a series of edifices that must be traversed in order for each community and each group and each individual with a narrative in this land to be able to endow their experience as a part of the American world. An awareness of the reality within which you live. Not just that, an awareness of your role in oppressing the people that are oppressed in your community. The assumption is not that the student is oppressed all of the time, but that the student is a member of community, and in community, every one of us is one time oppressed and one time an oppressor. I, as a Muslim man, am a part of an oppressive regime, not by my choice, but by my gender. Because there are things that are permitted for me that are not permitted according to the collective tradition for a woman. If I want to be a part of liberating my community, I must understand that I am a part of the oppression structure that exists that is not allowing other people to gain freedom. The second component of conscientization is teaching a student to act upon this world in a way that recognizes the knowledge that they have attained and allows for that student to find relevance for their heart, relevance for their curriculum, relevance for their experience as it relates to the world within which we live. It's two parts. The first part is to understand what it is that is happening around them. A literacy that goes far beyond words and sentences and language.
And number two, they have to understand the structures that exist and are available to them in order to bring about a change in this reality. Not just to alleviate the suffering that they are feeling, but to alleviate the suffering of other people. If we bring this story to the American context, we begin to realize that a teacher in America is a bricklayer of pluralism. The teacher in America is a bricklayer of pluralism. What does that mean? That means that this nation is not a nation sourced in multiculturalism. This nation is not a nation sourced in whiteness. It is not a nation sourced in Christendom. It is not a nation sourced in any approach to societal gathering other than freedom, justice, and equality among all people. And so the teacher has a role in ensuring that a young person sees her or himself for the beauty and brilliance and relevance that they are to the society within which we live. It's a necessary component of a teacher's job in an American context, is to convince each young person that they are needed in order for America to come to full fruition in its progression of identity. That is a part of your job. The second part of your job, which might be just as important as the first part of your job, is to understand the plural reality that America is in order that you gain sufficient expertise to explain to your student or to facilitate for your student an ability to see her or himself within America's pluralism. The teacher's job is not simply to create a reality in which an individual self-actualizes, comes to full developmental fruition, but is also an individual that understands America enough that you are able to facilitate for that student who has now gained awareness a place in the orbit, in the constellation of what we refer to as America's pluralism. So what does that look like? To name the realities within which we live, to reflect upon those realities, and to act pursuant to an intention sourced in wanting to change those realities. These things together allow you to begin to develop your democratic personhood. Your what? Your democratic personhood. Which means what? It means that you as an individual, you are uniquely poised to contribute to the civic life of this society. But it requires that our teachers and our schools and our academic environments, be they in a classroom or in a park or at a skate park or on a basketball court or at home or in the garage or wherever you want to have it, it requires that we establish a culture, an environment that allows for young people to ensure that they are developing an identity that is relevant to society as it exists and it functions today. What does that mean? It means that your students must be able to reflect and not just opinionate. It means that your student must embrace concepts that they did not embrace prior to entering the classroom. It means that we have to advance beyond you telling me what your mom and dad think about what's happening in the world and what's happening in this country. When we are teaching young people in America, we should be teaching presidents. We should be teaching senators. We should not be, as teachers, yielding to neoliberalism so that we create from one university a manager for the Walmart and from another university a CEO for all of the Walmarts. We should be building each individual's ability to establish their democratic personhood and to rise to a level of thinking that is post-conventional, that allows each student to build a reality that they can own themselves. John Locke said you got a plot of land that exists in the state of nature. Once you mix your tools and your sweat with that plot of land, you now have an element of ownership over this plot of land. What we want
in this society are young people that feel ownership over America.
Young people that feel like they belong in this constellation of institutions, of human beings,
of oppression and liberation that has come to dominate the rest of the world.
We want to offer them freedom, not just freedom from structural oppression, but freedom from oppression at home.
Not just freedom from what we perceive them to be wallowing in, but freedom from what they know they are suffering from that a teacher can never come to understand. What we need in this society is for each student to develop and to become the master. And there is only one way for us to be able to do that education. If more students refuse to become rote creatures, domesticating in a sadistic way the future of this world.
And at the same time, we build generations of students
that will relegate the role of a preacher to the role of a revolutionary and radical.